Welcome, 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 everybody, to Chapter 25, Part A, the beginning of what leads up to World War II. And I've got my stage set here for a little reenactment explanation with the Lego people. This is about what it was like. Anyway, before we start about that, let's backtrack a little bit into the League of Nations. Remember who started the League of Nations a few chapters ago? Britain, France, Italy, us in 1919. Okay. Well, even though it sounded like that was a great plan to help keep peace worldwide, when push came to shove later on in the 1920s and after the Great Depression hit America and Europe, the League of Nations really didn't do a whole lot for the peoples, okay? Germany, Japan, Italy all felt trapped under the burdens of the very first World War that was supposed to be the war to end all wars. However, it just led up to this next one, okay? And so let's take a look at some of those leaders and why the people looked to them for help and why their ideas sounded so great to a desperate group of nations. All right, so before we talk about all the people who played a role in the beginning of World War II, let's talk about or remember some of the isms that were the governing powers during this time. Okay, communism, right, was introduced and enforced into Russia. Okay, and so communism is a form of socialism which advocates the violent overthrow of existing governments with the goal of changing society and ultimately perfecting mankind. Communism always results in totalitarian dictatorship that dominates the people, property, and even the thought of its citizens by means of force or terror. Okay, poor Russia under Stalin, fabulously great. Okay, another thing that was introduced then is in Italy, all right, through Mussolini, and that was fascism. It's a form of socialism also that is similar to communism. It exercises totalitarian control of political, economic, cultural, religious, and social activities, and it follows Darwinism ideas in its attempts to change society and bring it in a new social order. Fascism is different from communism in that it allows private property and enterprise, but it strictly regulates those businesses that are privately owned. That's where Italy fell under. And then, of course, there is Nazism. All right. And Nazism is a form of socialism, but it relies more heavily on terrorist aggression, fanciful racism, and anti-democratic nationalism. Okay, and so that's what the Nazis, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, that Hitler started and terrorized the people with. Okay, so those are some of the things that, besides Japan and their militarism, okay, where they just took everything over by force, these are some of the different ideas that are swirling around the countries that became aggressive. Okay, and so let's take a minute and look at some of those. Okay, so let's start with the very beginning. All right, so we've got England and France and Italy, and of course us, and we started the League of Nations, right? Well, let's center more on Italy at the moment. Italy at that time in 1935 was run by not that dude, but this guy, King Victor Emmanuel III, okay? And here's a picture of him next to King Albert of Belgium. They were working together. And you can see how short he is. It's just for fun for you to see, okay? And so, as a result of the March of Rome, Benito Mussolini came in and said, I'm going to take over. And he made the King Victor, make him become the prime minister. And then later on deposed Victor in 1943 during the Allied invasion of Italy in World War II. Okay, so he didn't think the king was doing enough. After World War I, Italy was on the winning side, but the people complained because they thought they should have gotten more territory back. And so in enters Mussolini, and he takes over Italy. And at first he lets the king help him, but really he's got the control, okay? And so later on in 1935, Mussolini decides that he's going to come down to Africa, to Ethiopia, all right? And this is the Emperor of Ethiopia in 1935, and he's going to take Ethiopia, all right? But Ethiopia is like, well, wait a minute. They asked the League of Nations for help. And remember, at that point, Italy is still part of the League of Nations, and they're supposed to help against aggressive people. However, one of the League of Nations was being aggressive, and they were going to take over Ethiopia. And so the League of Nations, all they did was slap some sanctions on Italy, which was like saying no to Benito here. No, leave him alone, naughty. And Benito's like, whatever. And he conquered Ethiopia in 1936 and then said, we're leaving the League of Nations. Surprise, surprise. Okay, so next, after we've talked about Italy, let's next talk about Germany in the center of all this chaos and confusion that's rumbling. All right, during this time, though, that Italy's having issues, so is Germany, okay? And so here is their leader, President Paul von Hindenburg, all right? But I thought it was cool. I have to show you this. This is the guy's actual full name. Ready? I'm not even going to read it. But that's how long this guy's name is. And so they just shortened it to Paul von Hindenburg. But it was cool because you know I like words and names and stuff like that. So anyway, okay. So this man was the second president of Germany from 1925 to his death in 1934. Now in 1933, he was under pressure to appoint Adolf Hitler, okay, to be his chancellor of Germany. Now late in 1933, Paul signed the Enabling Act of 1933, which gave Hitler's regime an ongoing power. Okay, so after Hindenburg died in 1934, Hitler was able to take over as the leader of the Reich, the chancellor of the German people. So I just want you guys to see how there's one person in charge and how somebody else kind of gets in there and takes over. Okay, the stage is getting set for stuff. Germany is in a happy state at all because they're the ones that are slapped with all the blame of World War I, and the people are in a horrible state, okay, and they are willing to listen to whatever to get out of it. And so in comes Hitler and his ideas and how he's got a better way so that his people can be a military powerhouse. That was what he told them. They deserve to be that, and he can see them through that. Same with Mussolini. He wanted to make Italy a military powerhouse, okay? And so here's the stage set for Germany. Okay, so we've already talked about Europe a little bit, but now we're going to head on through Russia, and here's a picture of Stalin. Okay, we already talked about him and that he was known for his totalitarian rule in Russia, okay, but we're going to keep going over here to Japan, okay, and in Japan, this is the Emperor of Japan during the beginning of 1930s, okay, so in 1931, while Japan was still the fourth member of the League of Nations and the third largest naval power in the world, Japan decided that he was going to take over, my personal look, northern China, Manchuria, okay? And so this is the area of it. At that time, it was its own separate thing. And so here's a picture of Japan taking over Manchuria, okay? And then they quit the League of Nations. Now later on, Russia's going to invade Manchuria also, but we'll talk about that later. Alrighty, now we're back over into Europe and Spain. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, so here we have Francisco Franco. All right, while everybody else seems to be going for socialism, in 1936, Spain revolted against its socialist government with Francisco Franco. Okay, he was a nationalist that missed his monarchy. He was joined in 1936 July coup to take Spain back, but it failed, starting a Spanish Civil War. During the war, he consolidated all of the nationalist groups into one big party. Okay. 3 years later, in 1939, the nationalists declared victory and Franco spread his dictatorship over Spain. During this time, his reign was called the White Terror and was known to have killed 30 to 50,000 people. During the time that Spain was having their civil unrest, Germany and Japan and Italy formed the Axis power. Okay, and originally they said that they would stick together and take land over, basically, but they wanted to keep Russia out of it. Stalin, they didn't want any part of communism supposedly to be getting with. Okay, and so, and that was in 1936. And in 1938, Germany here, Hitler had been working on, we'll put him where he goes here, had been working on Austria. Okay, and so this is an up-to-date map. However, this is where Austria originally was back in the 30s. Okay, and Slovenia also. Okay, so but here is the leader of the Chancellor of Austria at the time. And so Hitler had been working to undermine his government power. And so in 38, Hitler was basically able to just waltz right into Austria and force him to let him take over. Okay, so now Germany has Austria and the Chancellor's out. Bink. Okay, and the League of Nations just sat idly by. They weren't doing anything. They were supposed to protect against aggressors, but they did nothing. Okay, and well, that was pretty easy. So Hitler thought, well, I would like to have my German people who are mixed in with in Slovenia, which was this new country formed after World War I here. Okay, he wanted to have control of his German people. All right, and so Slovenia is a new country, and they didn't want to be broken up again. They just formed. But they're in a bad spot because now they're by Austria and they're by Germany, and Russia's way over here, and they don't want any part of that. And so, yikes, what are they going to do? What do? They look towards the League of Nations, to France and England, and they said, please help us. And you know what help they gave them? They said, well, we'll go talk to Hitler. And they're going to go over to Germany. Oh, lost my hair. They're going to go over there and they're going to talk. Okay, but Hitler really liked this land right here. And he said, well, if you just give me part of this land, the Sudetenland, okay, then I won't take anything else. Wink, wink. Okay, so France and England said, okay, you can have it, because there wasn't anybody from Slovenia there to represent themselves. They were trusting the League of Nations, England, France, to do it for them. But they said, well, if that's all you're going to do, then you can have it, but that's it. Okay, and so the Munich Pact was signed, okay, saying that that would be all that Hitler was going to take, just a little bit of this. Okay, that was what appeasement was, either giving in to the greater power what they wanted, or taking no action at all when the weaker countries were attacked. Hold the phone. What is going on here? Okay, most of Europe was fine with this because it wasn't them. So they just let it go. 6 months later, though, Hitler broke his pact and took all of Slovenia, which was Czechoslovakia later on. Well, after that little charade, then Italy and Mussolini down here was like, well, if Hitler can get away with that, I wonder what I can do. So he went across the sea and took Albania. All right. it was then super clear that the League of Nations was not going to do anything at all. So now Italy takes Albania and takes them over, all right? After that, Hitler is feeling super confident in himself, and he's like, well, I'm not just happy with a little bit of Slovenia. I want all of this land over here, okay? I've changed my mind. And so now he's going to come over here and he's going to attack Poland. Okay? And here is the fourth president of Poland. And here's his name. Okay, I'm not going to botch it up, okay? He made a deal with Russia not to fight, okay, because Russia's on the other side of Poland. Okay, so let's look. So here's Poland, and here's Russia at that time period, and here's Germany. And so Hitler doesn't want a problem with Russia, so he's like, I'll take part of Poland, and you can have the other part, and we'll call it square, and we won't fight each other. Okay, so there was a line drawn. 48% of Poland went to Hitler, and the rest went to Russia, okay? So when Hitler proceeded to take Poland on September 1st, 1939, the British and the French finally woke up and declared war on Germany. All right, so World War II has begun, and I'm going to have my camera person zoom up on this word. This long word. I tried practicing the last 5 minutes how to pronounce it. I gave up. But the shortened version of this word is the new German aircraft called the Stuka Ju-87. All right, and so I got a short clip of actual footage of it for you guys to watch. And since I know you have been waiting in anticipation for your pop quiz, now is the time to get out the paper. Yay! All right, I got 3 questions for this video link that I want you guys to watch. The first one is, the Stuka was the first airplane to do what 2 things in World War II from a plane? What was the Stuka the first to do during World War II from a plane? Okay. Number 2, okay, because of the G-force that the pilots experienced while they were dive bombing, okay, before they were dropping their bombs, what happened to them? Okay, because of the G-force effect, as the plane is dive bombing to get to their spot to drop their bombs, what happens to the pilots? And number 3, how many of these planes were said to have been manufactured during the Second World War? That's how they word it, okay? How many planes were actually produced during the World War II of the Stuka Ju-87, okay? Go ahead and watch the link, World War II German Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber. And then come back and we'll talk about how Germany started picking off other countries. Okay, so let's recap. Germany attacked from the west to pour, okay, for Poland. Put him over there. All right, so here's Germany. They're attacking Poland over here. All right, and then Russia comes on down. And he's right here, and he attacks from over here. Now, England and France, they call war on Germany, but they totally ignore Russia. I don't know what is going on with that, but seriously? Okay, so, poor Poland. They get taken. We already talked about that. In April of 1940, starting, and then Germany decides then to take Denmark. They take Denmark in 1 day, all right? Then next they decided they were going to take Norway, all right? It took them a month, but they took Norway, alrighty? Norwegians were pretty stubborn, but they got taken also, okay? The Netherlands came next, okay? Here's the Netherlands right next to Germany. They were taken next. It took 4 days. And Belgium's like, I'm not even going to bother. 2 weeks later, they gave up. All right. So guess who? France is next and looking slightly concerned, right? All right. And so then there was the Operation Denmark, where England needed to get over here in a mad dash hurry to get their men out of France before Germany started bombing them. Okay, and so that was pretty interesting, and I couldn't get a real good clip on that one. But next, Hitler thought he was just going to go over and take England. All right, so then happened the Battle of Britain. Well, guess what? The Britons were going to take a stand, and they were not going to be so easily had. So let's take a minute and look at the London Blitz. Okay, so during the Battle of Britain, the London Blitz occurred. You wouldn't believe what becomes a tongue twister during these video makings. But anyway, all right, so I have a clip that I want you guys to watch. It's called The Blitz, 1940 to 1941, World War II, all right? And so I've got some questions that I want you to listen for while you're watching the footage of the bombings that Germany put London through. They thought that they could bomb the life out of them and then just waltz in and take them too. Well, England was not having it, but they went through some pretty awful stuff. So the very first question is, Winston Churchill orders the bombers to raid where after Hitler's bombers hit London? Now, Hitler supposedly told the Luftwaffe not to bomb London, but it accidentally did. And so Winston Churchill said, fine, I'm going to bomb where? In retaliation. Okay, so at the very beginning of the video. Number 2, from September 7th, 1940 to May 11th, 1941, London was bombed relentlessly, okay? It gives you a day of how many consecutive days and nights did Germany bomb London. How many days were they bombed consecutively? All right. It's amazing there was anything left, okay? In September, the worst bombing happened. It was called Black Saturday. All right. How many bombers first rolled in to release their bombs during that Black Saturday? It's in the hundreds. What's the number? How many bombers were sent that September afternoon to start bombing London super hard, right? And then at 8 p.m. more came, as if the first group wasn't enough, okay? Number 4, because the night raids were so awful, what did the London city people do with their children? Okay, because the bomb raids were so awful, what did the city people decide they needed to do with the children? And the last one was, these bombs from Germany, what were they made out of? So when they were detonated, they would start huge fires. Okay, they give you one of the ingredients. What was it? What were the bombs made out of that when detonated caused such large uncontrollable fires? Okay, and go ahead and watch the London Blitz footage. It should bother you because war is nasty, but watch it and then come back to me. All right, well, after the whole battle with Britain, Hitler comes back and he's like, well, I'll just go back to the mainland here. And so then he took over this area. At one point was called Yugoslavia. And so he took over Yugoslavia, and Albania was already taken by Italy, but Italy was Axis power with Germany, so it wasn't a big deal. And then Germany took Greece. All right. And so with that being said, then it was, hi. Okay, so after that, Germany was 6 weeks kind of behind their scheduled world dominance thing that they were going for, okay? And so they still decided that they were going to go ahead and surprise Russia and storm the gates over there, which was very, very bold. And however, it was October when they decided to start that trek towards Russia, okay, with rain and then snow. If you remember, Napoleon thought he could take Russia in the winter, in the fall winter time, and that didn't work out well either, did it? No. Okay, so it wasn't gonna work for Hitler either, however he tried, okay? So when Germany was getting into Russia and trying to take it, it started to snow. Well, Russia's got preserves and ammunition and food and supplies, and Germany quickly did not. Okay, so when spring finally rolled back around, they were both pooped out from fighting each other, except Russia still had the upper hand and Germany didn't. But guess what? Now they've waged war on each other. Now they had signed an agreement not to fight each other, but Hitler couldn't help himself. So now Russia's at war to get Germany out of their land. Whoa. All right, so the first part of chapter 25 has really, things have really heated up, okay? And so we end with Russia and Germany at each other's throat, okay? And so then Britain's upset, and at some point in 1941 or 40, the United States enters the war. And so we'll leave that for next week and talking about how they switch gears where America comes over and helps China against Japan, but then something happens that we'll talk about, and then America helps Japan and not China. And so it's like, that's why it's called the theater. It's an act being played out, and it's just totally dramatic. And so anyway, all right, turn in your guys' homework. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for next week when America joins in the dance and seeing where we go from there. So I'll see you next Friday.